in what will likely be one of many updates, we assume, when it comes to the transfer portal. Let's do an update. We need a sounder. We need a sounder for the Warchant TV and warchant.com. Heck, Jeff Cameron Show, Wake Up Warchant, you name it. We need a sounder for every time we have to update the portal. Got to imagine it's going to be bountiful, hopefully for the good for Florida State. We do have an update, though, for those that have been monitoring. Brendan Gant taking it on down the road. We talked about that some yesterday. And Mr. Woody is also on his way out the door. He had gotten switched to defensive tackle, and I wondered in that moment, Tom, if we're being honest, if this long-term was going to work out well for him. I think that's a tough transition with a group that is as deep as it is, and I think that's where we should start. If you go from offensive line, which is very, very deep, and that's a good thing to have happen to this offensive line in the last year, you've seen an added depth and quality of depth and competition. And then you go from that position and you get moved to defensive tackle. Ordinarily, you would have said, okay, well, there's a rotation in there for you, a guy your size. But, man, they're really deep there too. And so when we watched practice, you just never got a sense that he was going to get much playing time this year, certainly. Maybe hardly any, if at all. So you can understand why if he wants to play and play right now, maybe he feels like there's greener pastures. This was the spring I dubbed the spring of hurt feelings. This isn't a bitter thing. Brendan Gant got moved to positions as well a year ago and actually filled that role at linebacker, his move from safety to linebacker. I thought pretty well, Tom. I thought he was a player that did well in coverage in particular. And this isn't a segment group at linebacker where you see that be their expertise. So there was a use for him, and he filled that role pretty well. But he, too, has decided to go elsewhere where he can hopefully play a more prominent role. I imagine there's a few more names. Florida State's got to have a few more names go into this portal or decide to leave for whatever reason, given the 85 that they got to get down to.
Yeah, I'll start with Gant. That one hurts because they loved what he brought to special teams. He was a standout for Florida State on special teams. And then situationally, in this day and age of college football, if you have a team or an opponent that has a lot of slot targets and you don't want to, or at least more than one true linebacker out there who is tried and true around the line of scrimmage, stops the run, Gant was an option for you in that type of setting. So you lose a bit of a specialist who was going to be in the rotation, I think, in the fall versus Antavious Woody, who was not going to be in the rotation in the fall. They are so deep at defensive tackle, sir, that Bishop Thomas, who was somebody who was lauded last year through camp as going to be one of those guys in the rotation in the future, they're testing him out of the edge as a edge-setting defensive end versus D tackle. I don't know that experiment's going to work out, but the point being that if you got a guy like that who was brought in as a defensive tackle out of high school and the coaches were really high on, and you're trying to find a spot for him to get some playing time, that speaks to how deep they are at defensive interior. Now, the picture next year wasn't going to be as crowded. One wouldn't think. I mean, Josh Farmer, Darrell Jackson, Braden Fisk, and Fabian Lovett could all be gone, eligible to go to the next level. So if you could have held on for one more year, then perhaps you'd be in the plans. But there's no doubt of the younger players, 2 redshirt freshmen are going to be the first up when it comes to extra reps in the defensive line, and that would be Daniel Lyons and Ayo Tafasi. So it's just a very crowded situation for Antavious Woody. It makes a lot of sense. There were some folks I know specifically on the recruiting side of things, on the recruiting boards, that were hoping that Antavious Woody would have come here to Florida State as a defensive tackle to begin with. He projected that way in some people's minds out of high school, but they tried O-line first, didn't work out. And then this is just going to happen. It's part and parcel to being Florida State as a 10-win program and hopefully better, that you're going to have guys that you brought in, they aren't going to work out because they see that the depth chart is too crowded in front of them. So that's what happened, I think, in both of these cases.
Really good problem to have. I would argue and submit to everybody that it's going to be bigger names in the future. It's not going to be guys that are playing a singular role or not in the rotation and really not close to playing in the case of Woody. You lose a guy like that, most people, this is not a personal attack against the kid, but most people go, okay, we lost Antavious Woody. You might kind of cringe a little because you had something in Gant that was maybe more than what you thought you were going to get with that specialist role that you aptly described. But I don't think anybody's going to lose sleep over that either. in the future, there are going to be names that you lose. And I don't mean this particular trek around the portal. We'll see. We don't know. I just think that as you continue to build quality depth on your roster, you stand to lose some guys that are part of that depth who want to be starters and want to be a depth piece. They want to be a guy that's considered the man, and they may get opportunities at other schools that are trying to supplant their roster with more talent, and they see an opportunity to come calling on a kid, whether he's from a certain region, which is near that university, whether it's because that kid was a 4- or 5-star kid coming out of high school and hasn't been able to fulfill the role that he was expected to right away or as quickly as he would have liked. Kids like that are susceptible perhaps to hearing what they want to hear or being told what they want to be told. And so you lose guys like that. I think that's going to be the future. I think Alabama bakes that in to the way that they do business. I think that's probably going to be the way of the world for an elite ball club anywhere. If you're Florida State and you enter into the realm of being hunted the way that Georgia is right now, the way that Alabama is annually, the way that programs, when they're operating at peak efficiency and have cachet are, Ohio State comes to mind, Oklahoma for years, Southern Cal is about to emerge as such. I think Florida State's about to emerge as such if they get to where they want to go. And this is what's going to happen. You're just going to lose guys. And sometimes in the future, it'll be bigger guys than this, certainly.
Yeah, this is something that's kind of fun for Florida State fans too, because even if this process gets and poaches a player off the roster that you didn't want to lose, I don't think you're going to hate the kid. You know what I mean? Like there are times in the past where on National Signing Day, you'd have a prospect flip at the 11th hour, not communicate to the staff, and maybe that fostered some bad feelings around the fan base. But just as we did 5 years ago, we got used to something else, which is Florida State has a head coach who moved on to somewhere else. He's still in the profession. When Bobby Bowden left, he left the profession. When Jimbo Fisher left Florida State high and dry after leaving recruiting high and dry and going to Texas A&M, this is this weird thing where, oh yeah, there's this other thing on Saturdays that I could tune in and there's an FSU tie. It was different, and it was largely root against Jimbo. But in the case of the portal, Trayshawn Ward's at Kansas State. Going to check in on him. Malik McLean's at Penn State. Definitely going to check in on that kid. Wherever Brendan Gant goes, I would imagine he's going to play and be in the rotation. Let's just say it was someplace like, I don't know, like Indiana or something. If there's a noon kick and Indiana's on, man, I'm looking for Brendan Gant. How's Brendan Gant doing? That's the thing about the portal these days is as Florida State gets better and better, you have a lot of these no hard feelings send-offs. You root for these kids, and you actually start watching different pockets of the country because that's where some of these kids are going to go.
Yeah, you do. It is different, and it's a case-by-case basis because there will be plenty of kids that you're not rooting for.
Sure.
There will be kids that you go, well, good riddance, and I hope you fail. That's a bit harsh. But I would say that I'm just talking about the fan base. I wouldn't be surprised if that is a common occurrence, just like there are plenty of kids, probably more kids, certainly, that you are going to root for, that you're going to understand the set of circumstances. Nobody's rooting against Trayshawn Ward. I don't know how you could be if you were paying attention. He was great, and he played hard, and he worked his way into a place where he could start, and you could celebrate that because he was a walk-on prior. Nobody's rooting against that kid. But there would be plenty of kids where you're like, well, so Sam McCall's gone. Oh, well. That kind of a thing happens, and it's what it is. But having said that, it's the new world of college football. Portal, NIL, lots of changes, lots of comings and goings, and uncertainty, which makes you nervous on a day-to-day basis when these windows of time are available because you just don't know. Kids are going to get disinformation, just like we all do on a daily basis as we try to find out what's real and what's not in the world of news. Kids are going to be bombarded with all kinds of offers. Some will be real, some will not, and a few in between. And so that's what you worry about because your roster's never really set.
Yeah, I think and when you guys were doing headlines yesterday on Warchant TV live at 1 o'clock, just as the Jeff Cameron is, Monday, Wednesday through Friday on Warchant TV live at 1 p.m., I did a little section on the article because what he tweeted that he intends to go into the portal. So we have to have something on the site, and it's about impact on 2023. And it's minimal. And so far through these two transfers in 2 days, and again, we're recording this near lunchtime on Wednesday, April 19th, the impact of the portal losses so far is minimal. since the spring game. McClendon is that's a moderate impact, I think, of the defensive end rotation. But if you're just talking about from the spring game into this window of 2 weeks, so far, minimal impact on Florida State in the near term and the long term. But we'll see. Stay tuned on that.
When it comes to starters or the two deep, I can hear all of us from Braveheart, hold. Some of the other guys that are further down the list, but those two deep guys, you're like, oh, come on now. Let's get through this thing together. We'll continue to update you about the portal. And also, you should know, you see the offer right there. If you sign up through August 31st, you get, $29.99? That's what it is right now to become a Warchant subscriber. That is a cheap deal, a good deal, a deal you want to be a part of in the active, always active world of college football right now, especially while Florida State is on the rise, continues to climb, and is in a position to be playing really meaningful games, both on and off the field. Games in the portal, making moves. On the field, obviously, we all count it down from this point forward to the LSU game over in Orlando. So you're going to want to be a part of that. You're going to want to utilize the expertise on warchant.com, whether it's listening to the JCS, appreciate that. Wake Up Warchant, always love that. Reading Ira's columns, Corey's columns, all of the work that Tom Wing puts together as a content man. You're going to want all that stuff. That's what I call you, Tom, the content man.
I like that. That's my new title. We're changing.
Yeah, content man.
Yeah.
My favorite one. You're going to want all that stuff. Michael Langston also, obviously, in the world of recruiting, which is really busy all the time now, too. So make sure you do that. Get subscribed for just $29.99 right now through August 31st, 2023. Good deal for you. Warchant.com, of course. All right, more on that portal update as it becomes available, as it's necessary. Check back. If you like and subscribe, you'll get the notification that, in fact, we've done another video updating you on what's what in the transfer portal.